Now what? Not yet. Somebody poisoned the water hole. Huh. You know what I think I'd really like to do is finish all this scenery back in here, behind the mission and behind the Spanish section of Thunder Mesa town where all Burned Niners buildings are. Only problem is, I'm running a little low on inspiration right now. I've got plenty of pink foam. Yeah, I've got plenty of Sculpting mold. Ugh. Plenty of Halloween candy. I'm just running a little short on inspiration. If only there was someplace nearby where I could go and, I don't know, see some real Red Rock scenery in person. What's that, little Wahini? Drive over to Sedona? That's a great idea! That's better. This is just some amazing Red Rock scenery. In fact, you might even say it's downright inspiring. It really is incredibly beautiful out here. A great place to hike. There's about 300 miles of hiking trails around Sedona. You might even call it a nature's wonderland. Wow. Wow. Yeah, Sedona really is just incredibly beautiful and inspiring, and the best thing about it is it's pretty close by, so I can come back again and again. You'll never guess what that big butte behind me is called. That's right, Thunder Mountain. I had it first, though. Well, that was just what the doctor ordered. Now I'm inspired and ready to jump right into this. Let's get started. wanted to show some of the tools and materials I use when working with this extruded polystyrene foam, or EPF for short. First of all, we've got the good old X-Acto knife for making straight cuts in the foam. Usually just score and snap it, and that's where these metal straight edges come in. Lay that down there, cut, score, snap, makes these good square cuts. Then we've got this Woodland Scenics hot wire cutter, and that's great for making complex curved cuts in the foam. Various pens and pencils for marking. Loctite Power Grab heavy duty adhesive. This is what I use to hold everything together. Great stuff. And then there's dress pins to hold the layers of foam together sometimes while the glue dries. And last but not least, a Dremel tool with a sanding bit in it. And this is what I use to carve away and finish up the edges of the foam and put in some rock-like texture when I'm making rock layers. I think I'm just about done roughing in the Mesa with this pink EPF. And what I want to do next is mix up some Sculpting, which is a plaster and paper mache mix, and go back and fill in all these holes and nooks and crannies and blend these layers of foam together. Do a little more sculpting to make it look a bit more like real rock. If you've never used Sculpting, I can tell you it's great stuff. It's made by Amico, the American clay company, and it's basically a mixture of plaster and cellulose paper. So it's kind of like paper mache cut with a lot of plaster. And the plaster gives it a lot of strength, but the cellulose makes it light and gives it texture. I prefer to mix the Sculpting up in small batches using gallon-size Ziploc bags. This keeps things a little more neat and tidy than they otherwise might be. Right now I'm putting about 2 cups in there. See, there's a little bit of dust from the plaster. Now I'm just going to gradually add water and kind of scrunch it together to mix it up inside the bag. And what we're after is a texture, kind of like thick oatmeal. Making it inside the Ziploc bag really cuts down on the mess, and also extends your working time. Okay, that's just about right. Back over here at our scene, I'll just get all the air out, extra air out of the bag. Most of it anyway. Seal up the Ziploc like that, and then roll it up until you've got a little tip like that, and just snip off the tip of the baggie. And now I can squeeze the Sculpting out right where I want it, just like squeezing frosting out of a pastry tube. This is a handy trick too for working around finished scenery or things you don't want to get Sculpting on, because it gives you a lot of control as to where you can put it. Once I've got that in there, I'm going to start working the Sculpting in and actually doing a little finish sculpting on this. And for that, I'm just using, these are a couple of palette knives which are used in oil painting, and you'll probably recognize this, it's been used a lot before. Just a good old kitchen butter knife. Keep your tools a little wet. Get in there. And that allows you to work the Sculpting in. Now, the idea here is to blend it in with the rock detail that I've already carved into these layers of foam. Not covered up so much, but accentuate it and help blend it together. Don't be afraid to get your fingers in there too. Now as the Sculpting in this area starts to set up, it's easy to go back in with a wet knife and carve in some more detail, sculpt it to match the foam carving that I've already done. Also, you see where I leave the foam exposed right down in here. So I like this bit of carving and I want it to show through. It's kind of like the opposite of plopping rock castings on top of a plaster base. Instead of doing that, I carve the rocks and then I go back in and fill in between them with the Sculpting mold and blend. 2.5 hours and 3 more batches of Sculpting mold later, this is where we're at. I think I'll just let this dry for a little while and then come back and we'll get a coat of get a base coat of the scenery color on there. And this is my base scenery color, that basic red rock red that we saw in Sedona. And what I do is I create the color with artist's acrylics, and it's basically just a raw sienna that's been lightened up a little bit. And then I paint it on a chip like this. I mark it on the back with a name, and I take it down to my local home center, have them match the color in a flat interior latex, and that's what this is right here. And I use that as a base coat for all the scenery and also for the backdrop work as well. That way ensures that everything matches and looks like it's part of the same world. Okay, just give that color a good stir. As you can see, I've taken some precautions, putting tape on top of the track here to keep from dripping paint on it. I'm pretty careful with the brush, but I don't want to take any chances. I'm just using this is a 1-inch filbert paintbrush, artist brush for acrylics. They're not expensive. You can get them at any art supply store. I like them better than the big flat brushes you get at the hardware store. This shape is much better for getting into the nooks and crannies and all the little detail spots that you need to fill. Now, I'm not trying to do anything too clever or artistic in this step. I'm just getting a base coat of paint on everything. And after that dries, we'll go from there. Well, there we go. That's already starting to look better. I love getting that first base coat of paint on there. Makes me feel like I'm finally getting somewhere with the scenery. And it really does a good job already of hiding the transition between the foam layers. It's hard to see where the foam ends and the Sculpting mold begins. And that's where we're going to have to leave the project this week. When we come back next time, I'll start doing some detail painting on here and really rendering these rock layers out. Until then, keep moving forward, people, and adios for now. Aren't you glad we came, old Wahini? Me too.